Facebook. We're live on Facebook. It's go time for Facebook. Let me just make sure that's going to work. I want to see you, Facebook. We are talking high level about food behaviors and how mindful eating is really about taking a different action. That's what I want to talk about today on Facebook. I'm going to start the Zoom in a second. I'm going to start the Instagram in a second. Facebook always gets the first dibs. So hi, Facebook. Who's in Facebook with me? Who's out there? Shout out to Facebook. Good old Facebook. Where would we be without Facebook? Do you know what I mean? Hi, Veronica. Veronica's on Facebook. Awesome. Got 2 minutes before I start the live sesh here in Zoom, maybe like 90 seconds, and then I'll press go on Instagram. Oh, let's do this. I keep telling everyone I can't do stuff because Aaron says, do tell. I'd like to know more. I'm getting a little internet is unstable message. So let me know if I'm freezing or disappearing or any kind of degradation of quality. I'll try my best to, I don't know, what am I going to do? What can I do? But you can't do anything. This is what I've learned. Hi, Ashley. Okay, you guys are with me on Facebook. Super pumped. I'm going to start the old webinar here on the Zoom machine and on the Instagram machine. Hey, Zoomies. Where's my Zoom peeps? All right. What's up? It's me. It's Erin. I'm on Zoom. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Just doing all of it, doing it all. And I'm going to just give it a couple minutes for folks to join me in their various platforms. What are we talking about today? Julie. Okay, so on Facebook, Julie said, let's do this. I keep telling everyone I can't do stuff because Erin says. And then I asked for more information and she said, like late night snacking or midday cake. You know what? Actually, that's a great segue, Julie. Thank you for that. You can do whatever you want. You're a grown-ass adult. That's one of my absolute favorite, just empowering sound bites. You can do whatever you want. You're a grown-ass adult. Well, my role is, as a health coach, is to help people move toward behaviors they want to move toward. I'm not here to tell you to do things you don't want to do. That's super important to me. I don't want to do. That's not fun for me. That's not fun for you. Let's agree that you want to do this. Everybody watching this, right? You're here watching my 5-day mindful eating solution because on some level you're like, I need help with this. I would like to improve this for myself, right? Let's agree to that. So I'm here to give information. I'm here to help with implementation to a certain point, right? To a certain point. Let's be realistic, right? This is a 20-minute webinar on Zoom, on Facebook, on Instagram. What are we only have a certain point of returns that we can expect on this kind of thing, but we can start the conversation, which I'm always excited about. Julie's aiming for longer term benefits. Love that. Okay, great. So anybody who joined this little 5-day free program I'm running, you can get a lot out of a free 5-day program, especially when like your teacher's really excited to talk about it, really excited to help you. What we're going to talk about today and what we're going to talk about tomorrow, not to spoil the surprise, are the things that will decide how much you get out of it. You get to decide. You're in the driver's seat. Isn't that cool? That's exciting. So I just want to, before I get into today's topic, which is behavior. Okay, so no big deal. We're just going to talk about behavior change a little bit. Let's recap what you've already learned. So if you're looking to get to the bottom of your mindless eating habits, let's call it, and that can be anything that falls into that very broad category. Mindless eating can include stress eating, can include boredom eating, can include evening snack attacks, can include wacky cravings. We had a question come up in the Facebook group that says, she was like, who was it? It was, was it Sharon that said, what about when I get peckish? Peckishness, all of this stuff. I've given you so far 3 days of what I think are really important, super impactful solutions if you put them into place. Okay, the first one was what? Enable your environment. Whatever the thing is that you go out there and nibble on when you're in your downtime, in your little sort of mindless moments, can you get rid of it? Can you get it out of your house? Like, I'm sorry, I know that's really simplistic, but that's the easiest solution. Just don't have it there. And I talked about on Monday how it's like I want you to have your treats. Hell yes. Oh my God. I'm a hedonist. I love treats. Treat yourself is my motto. You kidding me? If it feels good, do it. That's the phrase I've lived by. Love me some treats. But like treats are treats in the sense that they happen occasionally. It's like, I'm going to have a treat. Treats don't go in the grocery cart. They're not in the house all the time. It's a treat. So get it out of your house on the regular. Bring it in when you want it. That was step one. Step two, let's talk about hunger. I strenuously believe, and I will argue this, not argue, I won't argue, but I will debate this, that snack attacks, cravings, weird mindless eating comes from being hungry. Real simple. If you weren't hungry, you wouldn't be peckish. If you weren't hungry, you wouldn't be snacky. I'm feeling a little snacky. These are all words that just mean the same thing. Hungry. It's all different ways of saying the word hungry. So that was so cute when Sharon asked, like, okay, I totally get the hunger thing, Erin, but what about when you're peckish? I'm like, that's the same thing. You're still just hungry. Just eat, just eat. What do you eat? I suggested protein. I suggested protein is the priority because it ticks a lot of boxes. When we talk about nourishing the cells so that they quieten hunger signals, protein is the star of that show. So how much protein? More. We did have a conversation in the Facebook group, like, okay, well, how much more? And I said, okay, well, you know, if I was going to give you a metric, shoot for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. That's a lot. That's a lot. I almost never hit that amount, but I try. I try by just prioritizing it every meal and having more. Okay, that was day 2. Day 3, we talked about, don't tell me, rhythm. Rhythm. Did you know these were unscripted riffs? Well, now you do. So rhythm. So yesterday we talked about getting into rhythm with your body. Your body's expecting fuel at certain times of the day. And if you can just step into that rhythm, even just a little bit, this all gets easier. Your cells are just way more ready to be fed. They're ready to take up that nourishment that you're putting in. So then hunger downstream is just generally quieter. I'm not here to tell you to manage hunger. I don't like that language. Sometimes I accidentally fall into it, but this whole idea of managing or controlling hunger, I'm not really in love with that language. I do like the idea of quieter hunger, just a hunger that shows up and you're like, oh, I'm a little hungry. And then you go eat food. That might be peckish, that might be snackish, but either way, it's a hunger signal and you should answer it with a meal that prioritizes protein. And I suggested the first hunger of the day, in the early part of the day, that's your body saying, nourish this body that is about to enter into a day. It's about to start a day. By the way, your cells have no idea what you have on the agenda for that day. They don't know if you're going to go crush a workout or if you're going to sit on your ass. They don't know. They just know that the sun rose and it's time for some fuel. And so if you can just answer that in the early part of the day, prioritizing protein, paying attention to putting a good chunk of your nourishment in the early part of the day, and then just naturally tapering that off at the end of the day, that makes sense. You can see that that's really freaking logical from a circadian biology perspective. You're like, duh, no kidding. You should eat more food in the early part of the day, right? Right. So those are the first 3 days. Those 3 days were extremely tactical, super freaking actionable, little things you can put into practice. And if you've been doing that for the last 3 days, things are already changing. Things can already be changing. This changes pretty much right out the gate, which is really exciting. And what am I talking about? What changes are you noticing? Just quieter hunger. Just, oh, I was able to go longer before my hunger kicked back in, or when I did get hungry, it didn't feel as urgent. That's the first step. Have we cured mindless eating in 3 days? Maybe, probably not. There's still a lot more to unpack. So I want to get into that for today. And again, I'm going to be really nimble here, short. I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to make your eyes glaze over. Today's lesson is about behavior. And I kind of hinted at this yesterday when I was talking to you guys. I said, whenever somebody comes to me, whether it's a client of mine, a one-on-one client, or one of my rebooters, shout out to the rebooters who out here has done a reboot. Metabolic Reboot is my 30-day program that is really, really cool, super deeper dive into this stuff than we're doing here in the 5-day freebie. But people who I work with in either one-on-one or in the reboot, those are the 2 ways I work with people typically, they'll say, I have a bad habit of snacking. I have a bad habit of mindless eating. I have a bad habit of boredom eating. And they're like, bad habit, bad habit, bad habit. I'm like, hush, hush. Start talking about yourself to yourself more kindly. Oh, you guys, in the reboot, I'm super, anybody who's done the reboot knows, like, give me an emoji if you've done a reboot. I'm all about self-kindness. I'm all about self-compassion. It's the missing piece in diet culture, which taught you that if you're not succeeding, you're failing, and therefore you're a failure. And all this negative language and all this just like really self-defeating language, this identity type language that comes down to, I'm a bad person because I wasn't able to be perfect. And it's like, I'm not here for that. I am not here for that. So I talk a lot about self-compassion in my workings with clients, especially in the reboot. And I want you to start entering into this conversation with some self-compassion. Enter into the conversation of behavior or habit with some self-compassion. Because here's what we know about behaviors. Behaviors are simply actions that are triggered by something. Behaviors are a decision that you make. You make a decision to act, right? Would you agree? Right? I go into the shower and shave my legs. This is a weird example. I'm sorry. I just came at that's a behavior that I decided to do. That's an action I decided to take. I don't even know why. That was a really weird. I'm sorry. That was a terrible example. Wow. We're just flying by the seat of our pants here. But any behavior you do is an action you've decided to take. Now that's a bit of an interesting pill to swallow. Like, oh, Erin, you're saying that I decided to mindlessly eat. And you're like, no, it was mindless. I didn't decide. It just happened. It just happened to me. I'm here to really absolve you of that feeling of disempowerment. It didn't just happen to you. You actually opted into it. Guess what? You're the problem. Now, hear me out. You're the problem. This is a soundbite. I think I stole this from Tony Robbins, actually. You can hear that phrase and you can interpret it two ways. Oh, I'm the problem. Oh, I'm the problem. Or, oh my God, I'm the problem. Yeah, that's so easy. If I know I'm the problem, then hey, I'm the solution, right? So you're not a problem, but I just wanted to borrow that from Tony Robbins, which is like, wow, oh my gosh, that's so empowering. I am making a decision to mindlessly eat. Now, just to reflect on what I touched on a second ago, part of that's coming from your biochemistry, part of that's coming from your cells saying, yo, we're hungry, we're snacky, we're peckish. So part of that's coming from your biochemistry. So you apply what I taught you in the earlier few days of the week, and we get the biochemistry kind of purring like a kitten. Then you can make different actions. You can take different actions. I've long believed, this is actually foundational to my health coaching practice in my one-on-one client relationships and in my metabolic reboot. We start with biochemistry because it's actually the easier knob to twist. It's easier. It's just like, do this, do this, do this, eat protein, answer your hunger with a meal in the early part of the day, get the shit out of your house. Those are easy because those are very actionable. And once we have biochemistry kind of purring like a kitten, behavior is easier. I'm going to give you an example. I think most people know that in order to lose weight, you need to come into a caloric deficit. That hasn't really changed. That has just really never changed. That still is true, right? I'm just using this as an example. We're not here talking about weight loss. We're certainly not here talking about calories. But that is a true statement. So if somebody wants to lose weight, you say, well, just come into a caloric deficit. And you're like, okay, how do I do that? And you can say, well, just eat less. So if I say to you, just eat less and you'll lose weight, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll give that a try. And that's only going to work for so long, as evidenced by the fact that, I don't know, diets don't work. If instead I could say, you need to have a caloric deficit to lose weight, and you say, well, how do you do that? And I say, be less hungry, then it's easier. So if I can make people feel less hungry, then it's easier to make food decisions, right? Whether that's eating fewer calories or whatever it might be. When you're just operating from a place of quieter hunger, decisions are easier to make. Decisions are easier to make. And to recap, you're making the decision to mindlessly eat, even though you don't think you are. Even though you think you're kind of disembodied and your disembodied soul is going into the pantry and you have no control over it, you're actually deciding to do it. So now we've got your biochemistry kind of foundationally, or I've given you tips to get your biochemistry, your hunger quieter. It's now easier to pay attention to behavior. So here's what I want you to do. There's a moment when you decide to go into the pantry, into the fridge, and have whatever it is that makes you feel bad about yourself. Whatever it is that brought you here to listen to this. There's a moment where you decide to do that, and most of us don't notice it until later. So I call this past tense noticing. It's like, oh, past tense me. Oh, Erin from 2 hours ago, what a train wreck she was. She went into the pantry and ate a whole sleeve of Oreos. What's her problem? So like I can talk about past tense Erin having done that thing. And I can look back at past tense Erin and say, wow, why did she do that? I wonder why she did that. But what we want to try to do is get into present tense. Present tense Erin. Why is present tense Erin walking into the pantry right now? Why am I in the pantry? And this is hard to do. So I'm not telling you guys you should just go and start doing this, but you want to start backtracking from past tense you to more toward present tense you. And here's how I love to do this. I put this in the email today, in the email that the 5-day mindful eating solution peeps received. Think back to your last mindless eating episode. I don't care when it was. I have zero judgment. I don't care if it was 5 minutes ago. Who cares? Last night, 3 days ago, don't care. Just remember one that you go back into the past tense you and remember when past tense you had a mindful eating episode. And try to relive it, specifically the moment where it went from I'm feeling snackish, I'm feeling peckish, I'm feeling hungry, I want something sweet, I want something crunchy, whatever this is the trigger, this is the moment where you made the decision. And then what was happening in that moment? Did you open the bottle of wine? Is that what it always is? Was it sitting on the couch after a long day? Was it closing your laptop after like 4 consecutive hours of Zoom? Do you know what it was? It's hard. I just want you to start thinking about this. Like, try to figure out what it was that made that little nugget happen. And then the next piece is and then what? So we have a trigger and we have an action. What was the trigger that made you think, I'm feeling like I want a little something sweet? I'm feeling like I want a little something crunchy. Whatever that was, what was the trigger? Start to find it. And then what was the action? And there's even a moment in between those two. There's even a little tiny pause in between those two where you are in decision mode. Like, I'm deciding to get up and walk into the pantry and have the Oreos. The trigger was my laptop closed. I made a split-second decision to take action, which is going into the pantry and getting Oreos. There's nothing wrong with going into the pantry and eating Oreos. Just so we're clear. But if it's something that you want to get to the bottom of, you have to pay attention to your trigger point, the trigger point, that moment in time. You want to drop into the present tense. And so if you can look back on a previous mindless eating episode and start to dissect it in this way, and I just ask you to try this as an exercise. Dissect it, try to find out the trigger, try to find out the action, and then just kind of acknowledge the little decision hinging point in the middle between those two things. That starts to train a little bit of a muscle. We'll call it a muscle in your brain to start becoming more aware of triggers as you're in them. Not right away. All of this stuff takes practice. By the way, guess what tomorrow's lesson is? Practice. Because this stuff is not easy, but I wanted to empower you by reminding you that you are making decisions. We got your biochemistry purring like a kitten. Now you have sort of a clear, sort of blank slate from which to make different behavioral choices. So my exercise, my assignment to you is reflect back on your last mindless eating moment, the one that made you feel bad about yourself, right? Don't dwell on those feelings, just dissect it, get the data, become like a scientist, just start teasing it apart. What was the trigger? You probably have really common triggers. You probably have the same trigger almost every time. We did remove one of the triggers on day one, which was that neurological trigger that you're wired to want to eat junk food. So if you don't have it in the house, then that trigger's gone. But then there's like a sort of like a behavioral trigger that also, or an environmental trigger or something that causes you to make the decision to go into the pantry and avail yourself of the treats. So find in your memory, in your recent memory, one of these episodes, dissect it, pull it apart, look at the data. This is going to start training you to notice what I call training the muscle, what I call mindfulness in the moment. I stumbled over my words. Let me say that again. We're training mindfulness in the moment rather than past tense mindfulness. We're like, oh, yesterday Aaron was a real piece of shit. No, I want you to get mindfulness in the moment. Observe, oh, I just closed my laptop after 4 consecutive hours of Zoom and now I feel like I want to go eat cookies. Oh, oh. Once you have that sort of in the palm of your hand, you can make a different decision. And guess what? When you do that one time, as soon as you do that one time, as soon as you recognize, "Oh, right now in this moment, I'm being triggered. I'm being triggered right now." As soon as you realize you're being triggered, and you can say, oh, and my trigger usually leads to an action that I don't feel good about. You can make a different choice. You can go this way, or you can go this way. The trigger remains, but the action can go in any direction you want. You can make a different choice. And you know that's the most empowering thing. That is actually the most empowering thing when you are still triggered, because the trigger still is going to exist, going to still close the laptop or whatever, the kids are still going to go to bed or whatever it is, but you can make a different choice, a different decision. And that's really empowering. And once you do that one time, once you do that successfully one time, it's really exciting. So that's kind of how I want you to take this idea of dissecting your mindless eating moment. Find the moment, try to drop into the moment. I'm making it sound really easy and it's not. It's not easy. Does this make sense? Is this landing for everybody? And what questions do you have about this at all? Or why don't you share in the comments if you know already what one of your triggers might be, what some of your triggers are. I can tell you one of mine. One of my triggers is 8 p.m. Okay, so hear me out. I love wine. I just really love wine. The ritual of wine is something I really love. But I have like this unwritten rule that I only drink wine after 8 p.m. And that's just, I don't know, it's one of my weird rules. But now it's to the point where when the clock hits 8 p.m., it's like, oh, it's wine time. Whether I want it or not, the clock clicks to 8 p.m. and I'm like, oh, time for wine. That's my trigger, 8 p.m. And when 8 p.m. comes, I can either open the wine or I can brew a pot of chamomile tea. And I always feel kind of like pretty cool when I go for the tea instead. Like, no hate, no shade on the wine. But I feel pretty cool when I can have my trigger and then make a different action. It's like, I'm in charge here. Guess who's driving this bus? Me. And that's what we want. That's mindfulness. That's the difference between mindfulness and mindlessness, right? I'm driving the bus here. I'm in charge. You can trigger me all you want, but I'm going to make the decision that I want to make. So we have Netflix. That's a big one. Sitting on the couch watching TV is probably one of the most common ones. Give me an emoji if that's something that definitely resonates with you. Like, the TV's on, I want to nibble on something. Part of me thinks that's kind of fine. Like, I think we can get into the details of that too. When the TV goes on, I go and get chips. What if it's when the TV goes on, I go and get a bowl of olives or a bowl of raspberries or something, Greek yogurt, right? Like, there's nuance here in terms of changing the behavior. The behavior doesn't have to be stopping the snacking altogether. It's just making a more mindful choice. Because if, for example, when I'm watching Netflix, I crave a bunch of chips and then the chips make me feel bad, that's what we're trying to solve for. We're trying to solve for the feeling bad part. So if the trigger is I'm sitting down watching Netflix and I go and get a nice bowl of Greek yogurt and I don't feel bad, bravo, we're going to call that a massive success. What do we got here? My trigger is my cup of tea after dinner. It always makes me want something sweet. Having the chocolate already out of my pantry makes me feel cool because I don't have the candy bar to binge on, and I honestly have enjoyed my tea even more this week. Beautiful example, Isabella. So Isabella has her cup of tea after dinner, and something about that scenario triggers this want for chocolate. She got it out of the house, so she still has the tea. It still honestly triggers the feeling of wanting chocolate, but it's physically not there. So that the action that Isabella decides to take is, I'm just going to enjoy my tea. And she's enjoying it even more. It's not like, I'm not getting the sense from Isabella on this comment that she's feeling like punished or like deprived. She's actually just getting to enjoy her tea and being able to drop in really interesting. You can drop into that mindful moment, Isabella. We got kids in bed and I haven't eaten enough that day. 1,000,000%. Okay. Haven't eaten enough that day. We tried to cure that one on day 2. So eat more, just eat more, have more protein, be more well-fed. That's just practice. It just takes more practice. But when the kids go to bed, that's what I hear all the time too. It's like, oh, I finally get to just sit down and like relax or just like turn my brain off. And there's something really beautiful, I think, about that ritual for busy adults with children. On one hand, I think, heck yeah, you want to have some kind of relaxing ritual after another day of parenting and just busyness. Love the idea of a ritual. So what we're getting really granular on is, can the ritual be something different? So if the trigger is the kids go to bed and I have a ritual of eating a bunch of ice cream, all I'm saying is the kids go to bed and I have a ritual of having a bubble bath, or I don't know, something really is as enjoyable as maybe a bowl of ice cream, but that's not going to put you into that shame spiral. We're trying to solve for the shame spiral here. Driving this bus, getting lots of good comments, lots of thumbs up. So you guys what's really amazing is that I've had a bunch of you guys here. We've got a lot of people recognizing their triggers. Kelly says in the Facebook group, so this is a great question. She says, so it's not necessarily that we have to change the trigger, just the action. Exactly. The trigger will always remain. And when you can acknowledge that you're in it and you have the moment in that moment, that's your point. That's your nugget to make this decision or this decision. But you have to be consciously in that moment, acknowledging it. The way to start doing this isn't by me telling you, hey, guys, be more conscious of your triggers. It's not going to work. That's why I say do an inventory of the last time you remember feeling like you mindlessly ate, and see if you can dissect that and find the trigger. And then that's going to come up again. It's going to be 8 p.m. every day for me, right? Every day at 8 p.m. I'm triggered and I make a choice. Sometimes it's wine, sometimes it's tea, sometimes it's nothing, right? But it's always an intentional choice, and I'm always mindfully in that moment, mindful in the moment. So mindful in the moment rather than past tense mindfulness, which is a good start. It's a good start to say, oh, I shouldn't have done that last night. Oh, I mean, we've all had those moments maybe with adult beverages where we overserved ourselves, right? And it's like, oh, I should have stopped after that second whiskey or whatever. And we can always look back and realize when we should have made a different decision, which is the first step. But I'm saying let's take it to the next level and start to train your mind to drop into mindfulness in the moment. So I love that this is landing with you guys. It's relatively nebulous concept, super important. Oh, hang on. I'm back. Super important. Real talk though, we're not going to solve behavior change in a 20-minute webinar. So tomorrow's lesson is about practicing. And when I talk about practice, I talk about practice what you've learned here. Just put it into practice. Manage your expectations in terms of how you're going to knock this out of the park. So be really practice self-compassion. Is a big thing that I teach. I teach this in spades in my metabolic reboot. By the way, the enrollment for metabolic reboot's opening tomorrow. So you're going to hear a bit more about that tomorrow. Metabolic Reboot's a 30-day program where I help you practice some of the biochemical stuff you've learned here. We go really into the behavioral stuff that we talked about today. And the big piece of it is you practice with me and a community of peers, and you can bounce ideas. And you know what's really important part of practicing, you guys? Failing. Failing is a huge part of practicing. And it's actually feels safer to fail when you have a support network. In some ways, I'm kind of in the failure business. Like, I want you to fail. I want you to just go out there and try stuff and screw it up and learn from it. And I'll be here to kind of catch you, dust you off, and help, set you up for that next experiment. And this is to help empower you, make you stronger, make you more self-efficacious. You can do this. It just takes practice. So that is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Practicing this, how to practice what you've learned here, how to practice self-compassion, and how to get help practicing from me and a community if you should so desire. Okay. By the way, one thing real quick. I'm going to show you guys this. I'm going to flash this for you. Do you see what this is? It's kind of bright for my zoomies. Zoomies, can you see that? Wait. Oh my gosh, that's so bright. Can you guys see this on Instagram? Yes. What? Can you guys on Facebook see? Okay. Can you see? It's too bright. These are AirPods. This is a brand new Apple AirPod. I'm going to give these away to somebody. in the next couple days. Somebody here. Somebody watching this is going to win this pair of Apple AirPods. So you have to come tomorrow and find out. You have to come to tomorrow's session and find out. Don't worry if you can't come to the live, because I'm always going to share the replays. So if you're watching on Zoom, watching on Facebook, you guys are getting the emails. You guys are in the community. You know where to find me. If you're watching this randomly on Instagram, just click through some of the links in my bio to watch the replays and to come and join me on these lives, because I'm going to give away these AirPods I got kicking around to somebody who joins me in the 30-day metabolic reboot, which starts May 1st. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay. So guys, mindfulness in the moment, little tiny self-awareness exercise. Think about a previous transgression, identify your trigger, and then watch for that. Just start to become really hyper aware of that. And next time it pops up, you might come close to being in that moment. Again, it takes practice, which we'll talk about tomorrow. It might take you 10 or 15 tries to get into that moment, but you will. The first thing you have to do is identify it. So that's your homework for today. Identify your triggers and then start practicing taking different actions. And just like that, I close my book, which signifies completion. And I'm going to let you all go. Tell me how this goes. I'd love to hear from you. Okay. All right. Signing off Instagram. You guys are great. Beautiful. And signing off from the Zoom and the Facebook. We'll see you tomorrow. You guys are great. All right. Love you guys. Bye.